If cackling Kamala's career wasn't already over, it's officially toast. She is back on the tour circuit, serving up fear, confusion, and contradictions, calling President Trump a tyrant and comparing our democracy to communist dictators. And wait until you hear the latest insult she just hurled at you, the American people. Meanwhile, President Trump took on the United Nations, flinging insults faster than a Twitter troll on caffeine. Plus, Jimmy Kimmel set to hit the airwaves tonight as Disney finally issues its first statement on the controversy. And then the verdict is in for Ryan Routh, the man accused of attempting to assassinate the president. And wait until you hear the crazy move he made after the verdict was read. All that and much more right here on The Kerri Lane Show. As always, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. And if you're feeling brave today, go ahead, share it with a liberal friend who desperately needs to hear the facts, something we know the left seems to be allergic to. Kamala Harris, one of the worst sufferers of that allergy. She decided it was a brilliant idea to throw her Democratic friends and even her former boss right under the bus, all while taking zero accountability and twisting her answers into something completely unrealistic and disingenuous. And if that wasn't enough, she doubled down by stoking fires with dangerous, reckless rhetoric. Watch this.
And right now we are dealing with, as I called him at my speech on the ellipse, a tyrant. We used to compare the strength of our democracy to communist dictators. That's what we're dealing with right now in Donald Trump.
I used to chalk this up to ignorance, but not anymore, because I don't think they're as clueless as I initially thought. I think this is actually deliberate. They are amplifying rage to rile up their activists and to manufacture crisis. See, they want chaos in the streets because chaos keeps them relevant and flushes donations into their pockets. But even more, I think they actually want to see our president taken out, and they're not even trying to hide it. The other thing Kamala isn't able to hide is her lack of intelligence. Watch Rachael Maddow suggest that Kamala didn't pick Pete Buttigieg as her VP because he's gay, even though she wrote that exact thing in her book, and then after she denies that was the case, but then she quickly tells the story of exactly how that was the case. You confused? Maybe this will help.
I guess I'd ask you to just elaborate on that a little bit. It's hard to hear.
Yeah.
With you running as, you're the first woman elected vice president. You're a black woman and a South Asian woman elected to that high office, very nearly elected president. To say that he couldn't be on the ticket effectively because he was gay is hard to hear.
No. That's not what I said, that he couldn't be on the ticket because he is gay. My point, as I write in the book, is that I was clear that in 107 days, in one of the most hotly contested elections for President of the United States, against someone like Donald Trump who knows no floor, to be a black woman running for President of the United States and as a vice presidential running mate, a gay man, with the stakes being so high, it made me very sad, but I also realized it would be a real risk. No matter how, I've been an advocate and an ally of the LGBT community my entire life. So it wasn't about any prejudice on my part.
So is she really saying it's the voters who are prejudiced, not her? That's not just a gaffe, that is an insult. She's pretending to be innocent while openly questioning the judgment of millions of Americans. Imagine if the shoe was on the other foot. A Republican would be scrutinized for saying anything of the sort. This is partly why she lost. America doesn't need leaders who blame the people of their own failures. We saw that for 4 years under the Biden administration. Instead, we want leaders who actually trust and respect the voters. And that's why Donald Trump is back in the White House. Even some in Kamala's own party are telling her it's time to ride off into the sunset, though knowing her, she'll probably get lost somewhere around high noon.
She ends up calling Biden reckless for staying in the race, saying having only 107 days to run for president somehow handicapped her. She doesn't have a future in my party or any party.
I'm not sure what Kamala expected after smearing just about everybody in her party. Now, she also called President Biden's decision to seek re-election recklessness, writing, quote, "Was it grace or was it recklessness? In retrospect, I think it was recklessness. The stakes were simply too high." And then Harris addressed major criticism of Biden's decline while in office, admitting, at 81, Joe got tired. That's when his age showed in physical and verbal stumbles. Well, here's how she tried to answer for all of that just this morning.
Do you regret not voicing your opinion in that moment?
Yes, and I actually have reflected on that, and I've written about that. I realized.
Would it have mattered if you did?
I don't know. Was that grace to not bring it up to him, or was it reckless? And on my part, I do reflect on that and feel that there was a recklessness about not raising it with him. I talk about what was going through my head, right? And what was going through my head to not bring it up was that it would come off as being very self-serving and therefore maybe lack the credibility that it deserved. But I do think about it.
Does she forget we have tape? Because here's a flashback of Kamala Harris repeatedly defending Joe Biden's fitness for office. Roll it.
Are you prepared to be commander-in-chief?
Yes, I am, if necessary. But Joe Biden is going to be fine.
I just don't understand about this age thing with Joe Biden, President Biden.
Let's not get distracted. Let's look at whether we have a president who has actually produced and followed through on his commitments. Joe Biden has done that. That's the measure of the man, not what's on his birth certificate in terms of his age.
Joe Biden is extraordinarily strong.
We all saw with our own eyes that Joe Biden wasn't fit to be president. And when Kamala was pressed on how she thought he could possibly run the country another 4 years if she didn't even think he was fit to run for president, well, here's how she explained that one.
It is one thing to have the capacity to govern. It is another thing to go through an election for president of the United States. So you are an athlete. You may appreciate this kind of metaphor. Running for president of the United States is like being in a marathon at a sprinter's pace with people throwing tomatoes at you every step you take. It is not for the lighthearted. It takes an incredible amount of endurance and stamina. And can you imagine doing it while you are also carrying literally the weight of the world as being president of the United States? So the distinction I make is about capacity to be president and what that election would require in that campaign, especially running against Donald Trump.
She literally just argued that running a campaign is harder than running the country for 4 years. Really? So dodging tomatoes on the campaign trail is tougher than dealing with China, Russia, Iran, and inflation all at once. By that logic, we should replace the president with someone who can run a 5K while holding a cup of coffee. Much more challenging, obviously. Now, speaking of athleticism, President Trump proved his own today during an abrupt stop on the escalator with Melania this morning. And then he wasted no time roasting the United Nations for that, as well as other incompetent moves.
All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen. But she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the two things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. Let's see, I can tell you. I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. The United Nations wasn't there for us. They weren't there. I thought of it really after the fact, not during these negotiations, which were not easy. That being the case, what is the purpose of the United Nations? All they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war.
President Trump isn't into empty words. He is about delivering results, and his message was received loud and clear. Now, meanwhile, back in Hollywood, the media was busy creating its own circus. Jimmy Kimmel back on the air tonight after what I'll generously call a timeout. After all, Kimmel's back on the air just less than a week later and only 2 nights after Charlie Kirk's memorial service. With that said, Sinclair Broadcasting says their ABC stations are still preempting Kimmel's show and replacing it with news, which honestly might be the first time we hear good news and ABC in the same sentence. And as of this morning, Nexstar is joining that fight and says they too will continue preempting the Jimmy Kimmel Show, writing, quote, "We stand by that decision pending assurance that all parties are committed to fostering an environment of respectful, constructive dialogue in the markets we serve." Now, Nexstar owns 28 ABC affiliates. That includes big markets like Nashville, Salt Lake City, and New Orleans. And yet somehow, after all of the outrage, Disney CEO Bob Iger swoops in to save the day. He reportedly made the call to put Jimmy Kimmel back on the air after what the company describes as a few days of thoughtful conversations with him. Now, I don't know what those conversations would look like, but if history tells us anything, thoughtful at Disney usually means don't do it again until the ratings need another boost. For the first time, Disney released a statement explaining why they suspended Kimmel in the first place, saying, quote, "Last Wednesday, we made the decision to suspend production on the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. It's a decision we made because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive." Now, it remains to be seen if Kimmel will apologize tonight. Sinclair is demanding he issue a direct apology to the Kirk family and make a meaningful donation to them as well as Turning Point USA. But let's be honest, if Kimmel couldn't bring himself to apologize the very next night before he got suspended, what makes anybody think he suddenly grew a backbone? The guy avoids accountability, kind of like he avoids funny jokes. Now here's a taste of the media's meltdown that probably pressured Disney to rush him back on the air.
Even though we're talking about comedy, this is so serious, Aaron. Yeah. America is a less free place if late night comedians cannot do and say what they want.
This is just the latest chapter in Donald Trump's ongoing campaign to crack down on free speech, dominate the media, and essentially render the First Amendment meaningless.
The suppression of Democratic Party speech is coming next.
That is a message to every other broadcaster on every other medium in this country that if you say something the leader doesn't like, you're probably at risk of getting axed.
It should shake every American that the President of the United States is out there firing comedians who make fun of him. That is not who we are. And every American should care and stand up to this.
I've also read a whole lot about authoritarian regimes. This is the playbook, folks. If you're not paying attention now and doing something about it, well, then you're going to have to sit down the rest of your life because democracy is being taken away.
And remember, these are the same Democrats who spent years working overtime to silence conservatives who dare tell the truth.
You shouldn't be banned from one platform and not others for providing misinformation out there.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
There are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda, and whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrence.
This is a matter of corporate responsibility. Twitter should be held accountable and shut down that site. It is a matter of safety and corporate accountability.
The First Amendment is not absolute. It does not protect any single thing anyone says. And there are limits, and that's important.
I believe that when it comes to broadcast television, like Fox News, these are subject to federal law, federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence.
See the problem? The left's credibility isn't just shot, it is buried 6 feet under. Oh, and I want to show you this. Sunny Hostin reacting to Kimmel's suspension versus how she cheered ABC canceling Roseanne back in 2018. The hypocrisy is through the roof. Roll it.
Our founders drafted the First Amendment specifically to protect the rights of citizens to criticize the government. When you cross that kind of societal norm, you must pay the consequence. And firing her was the right thing to do. I'm thrilled that ABC did it.
The left does cartwheels to justify every double standard. Every time. No moral compass, no self-awareness. The silver lining? Heaven won't be so crowded for the rest of us. But while they're busy justifying their own chaos, some politicians are taking reckless behavior to an entirely new level. Case in point, Governor Gavin Newsom. You may have seen his tweet aimed at Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, writing, quote, "Kristi Noem is going to have a bad day today. You're welcome, America." That's not a joke. That was reckless. And the timing could not be more tone deaf. He posted this the day before Charlie Kirk's memorial service. Now, the Secret Service, they took it seriously enough to launch a threat assessment. And let's be clear, Secretary Noem has already been moved into government housing for her safety because of the very real threats she faces. That's the level of danger Newsom chose to play games with. And what was this even about? Newsom was trying to score political points, promoting his new bill banning ICE agents from wearing masks in California. The same governor who forced Californians to mask up long after the science said stop, now banning federal agents from doing the same thing. But here's the kicker. He doesn't have authority over federal agents, and the law doesn't even take effect until next year. So this is not policy, it's theater. It is a headline grab, nothing more. As for his tweet to Kristi Noem, she's finally breaking her silence.
It immediately panicked my family and friends. Within, I would say, a couple of minutes of that being posted, I started to get text messages and phone calls, family, my kids saying, "Are you okay, Mom? Are you fine?" They know the threats that I've had. They know the threats that they've had, the things that have happened to them because of politicians like this that say things and somebody grabs onto them that has an agenda, the cartels and criminals that have threatened our family already. So when you get a post like that by a governor, immediately, my staff and family think, what is going on? What does he mean? And we're trying to figure it out. So, this is a day and age where we've always known that words matter, but there's been real consequences that we have realized that have happened to incredible people like Charlie that we'll have to live with forever. And I hope we all learn from that. I hope we all learn that it's time to start listening to each other, having civil discourse, and stop ridiculous, irresponsible posts like Governor Newsom put out there.
Think about that. A governor's tweet set off panic among a mother's children, her staff, her family, people who already live under constant threat. That's not clever. That's abuse of power. And let's not kid ourselves. If a Republican governor had posted that about a Democrat cabinet secretary, the press would have been screaming from the rooftops, demanding resignation, calling it an attack on democracy. But Gavin Newsom does it? The media just yawns and looks the other way. This is the double standard America is done tolerating. Politicians who preach about unity while weaponizing their own words against anyone who stands in their way. Newsom thinks this is presidential? No. It's dangerous, it's petty, and it proves exactly why he should never go near the Oval Office.
He just wants to use this to raise money. He wants to use it to go out and try to make himself feel like a big deal. And he's doing it by attacking our law enforcement officers and making their lives more dangerous.
We all know ICE agents are already facing a 1,000% increase in threats, and here's Gavin Newsom throwing fuel on the fire just to score cheap political points. We know from history that words have consequences. When leaders normalize hate, when they dehumanize fellow Americans, it doesn't end in debate, it ends in tragedy. But here's the difference. When conservatives are targeted, when we're threatened, when we face violence, we rise above it. And that's exactly what Secretary Noem did last night. Watch this.
Our country is better than this. It's better than posts like that. It's better than how he acts and the posturing, and that no amount of money he can raise for his political campaign, no amount of posturing to extremists and to activists is going to help make this life better for our kids and for our grandkids. So what we're doing here today and why we should get out of bed every single morning should be about what kind of a country our kids are going to live in, what kind of a country will our grandkids get. I know that's what makes me do my job every day. I just would hope that the rest of the country and people like him would recognize the importance of it.
That's the contrast. On one side, a governor who mocks, postures, and endangers peoples for headlines. On the other, a leader who puts faith, family, and country first. America doesn't need another reckless politician auditioning for the White House. What we need are leaders like Kristi Noem who know the job isn't about themselves, it's about protecting the next generation. And while we're on the subject of the left, normalizing threats, listen to this. Former MSNBC anchor Keith Olbermann openly threatened commentator Scott Jennings, writing, quote, "You're next, mother effer, but keep mugging to the camera." Now, he has since deleted it, but not before Jennings sent the post to Kash Patel. This is the sickness we're dealing with. The left thinks threats, intimidation, and harassment are tools of debate. They've normalized it. And let's be clear, this isn't coming from both sides. It's only happening on theirs. And it's got to stop before someone else pays the ultimate price. All right, let's get to some other breaking news today. A verdict has been reached in the would-be Trump assassination trial. The jury deliberating for only 3 hours before coming to a verdict of guilty on all charges. There was something bizarre that happened following that. Watch this.
In a Florida courtroom, the suspect in the second assassination attempt of President Trump on his life was just found guilty on all 5 charges. And then, shockingly, after that verdict, according to eyewitnesses in the courtroom, Routh picked up a pen and tried to stab himself in the neck in the middle of the courtroom before 4 U.S. Marshals were able to restrain him. He acted in this trial on his own behalf as his own attorney, telling the jury that he didn't intend to kill anyone. Prosecutors saying that the evidence is clear, quote, Routh wanted President Trump dead.
Wow, this case has been chaotic from the start, and today was no exception. That is something I did not see coming. As far as the charges, multiple weapons violations, assault on a federal officer, and the gravest of all, attempted assassination of a presidential candidate. Routh could face up to life in prison. Coming up next, in a move no one saw coming, CNN puts Hakeem Jeffries on the spot, confronting him about his lies in an explosive, unpredictable interview. Go ahead, click on that video you see now on your screen, and I'll see you over there. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.